A warm welcome to the show to our friend, chairman of the Republican Overseas Organisation here in London, Greg Swenson. Hi, Greg.
Great to see you, Kevin.
Thanks for joining me, mate. First of all, let's talk about Elon Musk. Incredibly, Elon Musk is to be summoned from on high by a bunch of two-bit British MPs in the Houses of Parliament. This is the Commons, Science and Technology Select Committee's social media inquiry. They want the world's richest man to sit before them to be grilled and to testify on the role of Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, which of course Elon Musk owns, in allegedly spreading the disinformation that two-tier Keir Starmer believes caused the summer riots. I don't think it did at all, but that's what our duplicitous Prime Minister thinks. But I mean, what do you think? I mean, there's two things going to happen about this ludicrous instruction. Mr. Musk, if you just cross the Atlantic and sit before us, we, a bunch of two-bit British MPs, have got some very serious questions for you. Two things are going to happen here. He's going to dismiss this with the utter contempt it deserves, or, and I fancy him to do this, he'll come across just for the fun of it. He'll have a good laugh at their expense. Either way, your thoughts on this extraordinary invitation or summons by Parliament to Elon Musk?
Kevin, I hope it's the latter.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just hysterical that they would even suggest that. You know, these are the people who censor British citizens and arrest people for saying something that's, you know, that they don't agree with. And I think that Elon Musk is a champion of free speech. So I think it would be great if he came over and schooled them like he did to the BBC a few months ago with that interview. So, yeah, it would be fun to watch. I don't think he'll do it. I think he has better things to do. Yeah. So it would be great, though, if he did.
But, you know, to go, and I hope if he does sit there, before these two-bit MPs. Yeah. By the way, the chairman of this very important select committee is the world-famous, you'll have heard of, I don't even know if it's a him or a her, it's someone called Chi Unwura. So write that down. It's a name not to remember. But seriously, if he does come across and he does testify, as I say, knowing Musk, he'll do it for a laugh. What he will be able to point out, in my view, is this contention by two-tier Keir Starmer that the summer riots were caused by X, by Facebook and Twitter, by people sending each other disinformation, misinformation. It's nonsense. It's like saying that in the past, before your time in this country, we had the poll tax riots under Margaret Thatcher. It's like saying that the cause of those riots was the telephone, people phoning each other up. The cause of the summer riots, Greg, as you will know, was unrest and fury over our escalating migrant crisis. So this entire inquiry is misfounded. It's nonsense.
Of course it is. And, you know, when there's what they call disinformation, that it means it's a policy or a view that they don't agree with. Now, when it is something that they want to censor, then they're totally good with censorship when it's something that they don't agree with. And you saw that with the Great Barrington Declaration in 2020. You saw it in America with the Hunter Biden laptop. You know, it's pretty amazing how they love free speech until it's free speech they don't like. So yeah, it's quite obvious now, and it's beyond comedy. And I again, speaking of comedy, it would be really great if Elon Musk came over and spoke to these people.
You see what I'm saying, though? That if you have unrest, you have a civil unrest, you have a riot, you know, a protest or whatever, you can't say that the cause of it was the method of communication that the participants used before they got there. That's not the cause.
Exactly right. And we've seen how good social media is in places like Hong Kong and places where there needs to be civil unrest. And it's great that they can communicate with each other. And so, you know, and look, we saw riots in the U.S. in the summer of 2020. It wasn't the social media platforms. It was the rabid radical left, Antifa and BLM. I'm not blaming their communication device for that. So yeah, it's pretty obscene, and I hope it goes away quickly before these guys get schooled by Elon Musk in a public forum.
Before we move on to the dozy Democrats and their incredible belief that Kamala Harris might be a really great candidate for their next presidential election campaign. You've been in America fairly recently on the build-up to the election.
Sure.
Try to sum up the way Americans are viewing what's happening in this country. I've heard Joe Rogan, for example, J.D. Vance, other prominent Americans just saying, we cannot believe what's happening over in Britain. They're locking people up for 2 to 3 years for posting allegedly hurty, nasty words on Facebook or on X. People getting sent to jail. One kid, an 18-year-old kid, got sent to jail for 2.5 years for unfolding a British Red Cross, St George's flag by a mosque, and so on and so forth. But the assault on freedom in a country that's supposed to have freedom of speech, Americans, I'm perceiving, are very shocked about what they're seeing across the Atlantic.
Yeah, they really are. I mean, and you've seen it in some of the responses. You've seen it, I'm glad that Elon Musk and others like him are calling it out. And I think that needs to be done more. I regret we've talked about this for years, Kevin. I think that we Americans exported woke insanity to the UK. I wasn't proud of it. I wish it didn't happen. But we were also...
I've been meaning to talk to you about this. Actually, I think I have, but carry on, sorry.
It's not... no, we have many times. It's not our greatest export to the UK. And I, of course, we were all disgusted with it when it started, but we were also the first ones to rebel against it. And I think the pushback started 2 years ago, maybe, Kevin, and we've talked about it many times. The pushback is on. And I think that maybe the pushback is coming a little later in the UK, and you have these labor people that are obsessed with their own views to the point where they don't tolerate opposing views. That's just completely wrong. And so it's great to see the pushback starting in the US. I think it will transfer here. It already has. We're seeing a great rebellion against it here in the UK. So I'm optimistic that these clowns in Parliament will not win this argument. That's for sure.
I mean, yes, because you've now got, of course, Donald Trump as your president-elect, and he's going to see about crushing wokery left, right and centre once and for all. I don't think there's much doubt about that. But I'll tell you who hasn't got the memo, and that's the Democrats, many of whom seem to believe that the ideal candidate to fight the next presidential election for them is the disaster from the last one, the catastrophe, cackling Kamala Harris. One of the worst politicians, one of the worst candidates I think any of us have seen ever. And yet a substantial number of Democrats have voted for her to be their next candidate. Now, they're not getting this memo that we're talking about, are they? They're not understanding that the reason she lost is she's talking about, funding surgery for trans prisoners, male prisoners. She's talking about, campaigns against racism and bigotry and all this nonsense. And, identity politics and, trans and they and them. One of Donald Trump's best campaign posters, I thought, was a picture of him and her. She's for they and them, he's for you. Do you see what I mean? That's her world. Now, that is what's being rejected. Why don't the Democrats understand that's why they lost? She's the reason they lost, because she embraces this claptrap. Why don't they get this?
Yeah, I think it will take a while, Kevin. I mean, look, the number was 41%. That's not that high. I think that's only 20% roughly, of the electorate overall. So if 41% of Democrats, maybe they're not, high information voters. she was a complete and utter failure and disaster. I don't think you'll see people from the party, like the inner circle of the party. These are the people that dumped Bernie Sanders because they didn't think he could win in 2020. They elevated Joe Biden, then they elevated Kamala Harris. So the inner circle has a really bad track record, that's for sure. But I think this poll was basically just random voters. I think they polled 1,000 voters for it. And sure, she's got name recognition, and maybe they're just in denial, these poor voters. But I don't think that she will get a lot of support in her own party. If there had been a primary process, a nomination process with primaries and caucuses, she would not have been in the top 5. She was just in the right place at the right time. She won the DEI sweepstakes in 2020. Joe Biden literally announced that before he chose her, that he would choose a woman of color. And it was a complete disaster from the start. I think if they're smart, they just tear up the playbook and start over.
Yeah, maybe, Greg, they go, yeah, look, we'll give Kamala Harris another go. And, that running mate of hers, that Tim Walz, he was really, really good. Yeah, they're the dream ticket. Let's do it again. I mean, surely the serious players in the Democrat Party do realise this identity politics, this pair were a disaster, and that the next election they've got to pursue proper Democrat policies, not paying for trans surgery in prison.
Yes, absolutely, Kevin. I think they know better. And again, this was a poll of random, voters, registered voters or likely voters, don't know. Look, it was a complete and utter disaster. And the smart people in the Democrat Party are actually figuring that out. Tim Walz was probably even worse than Kamala, if that's even possible. Her numbers in Minnesota went down when she nominated Tim Walz. 45,000 people have left Minnesota, since he became governor. 8,500 of which went to Wisconsin. So they weren't moving for the weather, that's for sure. Yeah. I mean, look, that campaign and both candidates were utter disasters. I don't think we'll ever see Kamala in politics again. I think she'll get some cable TV job, or she'll be the president of some Ivy League university, or some other kind of nonprofit. But she has no chance. I think she'd even lose in California if she ran for governor. That's how bad she is.
I mean, she was just, an utter catastrophe. I'm not going to rub your nose in it again, but I always did say I think Trump's going to win this by a landslide because of her. Yeah. And once again, Greg, I'm going to tell you, I was right, wasn't I?
Kevin, you said it many times. You were right. Nobody called the margin except for JL Partners. Yeah. Only you decided, could argue credibly that he was going to win quite comfortably, and he did.
Yeah, well, I'd like to say I won't mention that again, but I'll mention it every time we talk.
I'm sure you will.
Greg, great to talk to you. See you very soon.
Thanks, Kevin.
That's Greg Swenson, chair of the Republican Overseas Organization here. Kamala Harris again. Yeah, great idea.